Yo, what it do, baby boo? Welcome, guys, to the 30-minute podcast with me, your host, Tito. And first of all, thank you guys so much for the engagement on episode 7, last week's episode. I think that episode on YouTube has the most comments of all the podcast episodes thus far on YouTube. My podcast episodes, of course. So something I do with this podcast is that I always look out for what's unique about each episode in terms of, the back end, the numbers. Some videos have lots of engagement, some have lots of views. I think episode 5 from a couple of weeks ago is the most viewed episode on YouTube thus far. Episode 7 from last week, like I said, has the most comments. On Spotify, I don't think any of the episodes have been listened to yet for up to 100 times, right? Everything is under 100. And it's actually a bit surprising to me how my podcast does a whole lot better on YouTube than it does on the audio platforms. Well, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, those are the ones that I check the numbers on. I think from this week I'll start checking Google Podcasts because last week I just registered on Google Podcasts and Amazon Podcasts. I assumed that my podcast would get on those platforms automatically, but no, I had to go and register on those ones and index my podcasts on both of them individually. So I'll start checking the numbers there as well from this week now with episode 8. But yeah, essentially, guys, thanks for the engagement. Let's keep it up. And for those of you who are new, let's also try and join the bandwagon and get the numbers up, the views, the listens, the downloads, the shares, all that good stuff. In that same vein, guys, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember to like this video by clicking on the like button just underneath the video and subscribe to this channel as well by clicking on the black subscribe button. Doing those two things and sharing as well. They really do help this channel to, show up in search and to just show up on people's home pages and to reach wider audiences, particularly sharing it. Lots of people don't know that you can share content on YouTube. There's a button dedicated to sharing, on WhatsApp or on Twitter or on Facebook, just underneath the video, right? So if you click on that, it makes it so easy for you to share content that you enjoy with people in your WhatsApp groups or people that follow you on Facebook and so on and so forth. And honestly, that's how content or channels and creators' work really does grow on platforms like YouTube. So today I want to talk about how men, my gender, how we tend to be silent in relationships, or we don't open up to the women in our lives for whatever reason. And it could be not just our romantic partners, not just our girlfriend or our spouse or our fiance. It could also be our female friends or our sisters or our mothers. I'm sure you people watching, regardless of your gender, you've noticed that there are times that men just are quiet when ideally they shouldn't be. We kind of lock up. And I want to try and explain a couple of reasons why that happens. And to give you context, it's because I saw something on Ali Abdaal's podcast called Deep Dive with Ali Abdaal. And I think it's an episode from last year where he interviews Logan Ury. So Logan Ury I can't remember her role, but she works at Hinge. That's the dating app. She used to work at Google. And she has a book called, what's it called again? How to Not Die Alone. Anyway, in the episode or in the course of the interview towards the end, I think around the 1 hour and 51 minute mark, Logan talks about, Ali asks her about her husband, right? And here's the thing about Logan's husband. They used to work together at Google. I think that's where they met, but they've been married for 7 years, as at last year when the interview happened. He was diagnosed with cancer at some point, in their marriage, and he had a rare form of bone cancer. And he got, I don't think it's both legs, but he got one leg amputated below the knee. So, between the cancer treatment and, being an amputee, clearly his wife, Logan, had to really step up, and it was a trying time for both of them, right? So when, in the course of the conversation about what it was like caring for her husband, who was going through this very trying time, and, her being on the ride as well, being a spouse, naturally it's a shared experience, when a loved one, or particularly a spouse, is going through a severe health challenge. It's almost as if you're going through the challenge as well. But anyway, I digress. So at one point she talked about a trying time, and I'll play the clip for you guys, when she had to go on a family and friends trip, but they were going through a difficult period, I assume, in his recovery at the time. And she kept on asking him, look, should I still go for this trip? Should I stay? And he was like, no, it's all right, go. And she kept on asking up until the point where she goes, you know what, I'm not going, I'm just going to stay. And he lets out a sigh of relief, and he says, thank God, like he's really happy that she chose to stay of her own volition. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, that's a very man thing to do. Because it's understandable. I saw not the merit in it, but as a fellow man, I connected with it, that yeah, that's the kind of thing I would do as well. And I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if other men did the same thing. Let me play the clip for you guys so I can catch my breath and take a sip of water. Today I'm drinking water. There's no VG chocolates today. I miss it, but hey, we're trying to be healthy.
He also was somebody who wasn't good at asking for help. He's talented. He's independent. There were moments where he really needed help, and I had to pay attention to his cues, and he had to be willing to ask for help. So, for example, there was a really dark moment where, everything that could go wrong went wrong, and things were really scary, and there was just all these signs that things were going poorly. And I was supposed to go see my friends and family the next day. And this was a trip I had planned for a long time. And I kept saying, do you want me to cancel? Do you want me to cancel? And he said, no. And then finally I said, this is ridiculous. I am canceling. I can't leave. And then he was like, oh, I'm so relieved you're staying. And I was like, I wish you could have said to me, please stay. And then we talked about, can we have a code word for that? And we just went through so many intense emotions around, two people are in a dynamic. Then a drastic train bulldozes and careens into you, and now you have to redefine your dynamic.
Yeah.
But I think that we've done that in a really healthy way. And any questions that we might have around, are you in it for the long term? Can I trust you? Are you going to hold my purse in the cancer ward? I feel like we've definitely answered, and so we're truly all in, and there's just such deeper trust than there ever was before.
There's such deeper trust than there ever was before. Okay. So there are three reasons for Logan's husband's behavior that from what I think anyway, and as a man, or if I were in that situation where, my wife or my spouse says that she has this girl's trip, but I'm having a tough time with something or the other, and I actually don't want her to go, but I don't expressly say that I don't want her to go, and I hope that she says, on her own that she's canceling it and she's going to stay. So I'm going to talk about why I think that's the case as a man. All right. I think the first reason why men do not open up or do not talk in relationships, especially in scenarios like the one that Logan just described, is because we don't want to look like we need help. Because typically we're meant to be the ones with all the answers, right? We should be the ones, apparently, that lead the way, that have the answers, and we don't like looking like we don't have answers. And especially, I don't know, what women do this too. When you're driving somewhere that you've never been to before and you need to ask for directions. Sometimes I think men are more reluctant to ask for directions than women. I don't know, that's up for debate, but I have seen a few women who have been quite reluctant to ask for directions. Thank God for Google Maps, right? Pride as well. Pride and our ego, don't let us feel comfortable asking for help in moments of weakness. And I think the difference between Logan's husband as a Caucasian man, and I think Nigerian men, let me speak for Nigerian men, is that after she said, okay, this is ridiculous, I'm going to stay behind, and take care of you or whatever, he sighed and he was like, I'm so grateful, I'm so thankful that you chose to stay. If that had happened in a Nigerian home and the wife said, do you know what, I'm canceling, I'm staying to take care of you, I don't think the Nigerian man would have said, thank God, I was really hoping that you'd say that and I'm glad you chose to stay. No, I think the Nigerian man would be like, okay. And he'd be happy inside, quite all right. But he'd just act like, okay, so, do you, whatever. So I think us Nigerian men, men have the ego thing, right? Generally, men from everywhere around the world, but I think African men is another layer. There's another layer of ego with African men, and then there's another layer of ego with Nigerian men. So I think, yeah, there are extra layers when it comes to African men and Nigerian men. Even unless like they're like new age men who are now more open to vulnerability and all that stuff. So men like have been the one to have the answers, and we don't like looking like we need help. So that's point number one. Point number two is because, and this is a good one, I think men, we don't like when information or certain things are used against us or weaponized against us in future. I'll explain. In this kind of scenario, it could have gone a whole other way, or a whole different way if the husband had said, okay, I would like you to stay, and not go for this trip. I know you've been planning this trip for a while, but my recovery is not where it's at. I don't know if I'll be able to manage on my own this weekend without you. Would you mind staying? If she's a good wife, especially where something like cancer is concerned, she'll cancel the trip and she'll stay. But men worry that it could be next week, next month, next year, 5 years from now. We'll just hear one day in the middle of an argument, remember that time in 1947 when I canceled my girl's trip and I decided to stay home and take care of you? Remember that? Because sometimes women watching, women, especially in marriages and relationships, sometimes weaponize information or things that you do for the men in your lives, particularly your partner, right? At the time, it may seem like you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, but then it becomes a tool that you bring up further down the road, to twist the man's arm, proverbially. So it does happen. Maybe men do it as well, but I think women do it more. So I think why men do not talk or do not ask for help in situations like that is because we don't want that kind of situation where in the future somebody will bring it up and say that I wanted to do this, but because you asked me to stay or to do this other thing, I made that sacrifice, and now you're being so ungrateful, you're not reciprocating and all that. So yeah, in order not to hear that kind of that kind of nagging, I think we choose just to lock up, and we hope for the best. We hope that the woman makes the decision on her own, because if she makes it on her own, we have the ability to say, well, you made it on your own. No, I didn't ask you to cancel your girl's trip and stay. You did that all by yourself, even though the man was actually hoping that was what she would do. She'd make the decision on her own. And this point, like I said, this is why this one is interesting. It reminds me of that whole debate from a few years ago on social media of come over if you want to come over. Do you guys remember? Like, it was that argument of like a guy and a girl who are maybe in the talking stage or are dating, and they're on the phone, they're talking, what are you up to? Not much, I'm just chilling at home Saturday afternoon. And then the girl goes, well, should I come over? Should I come and check on you? And the guy goes, come if you want to come through if you want to come through, I'm good either way. And then she's like, do you want me to come over? Because there are two different things. And there was a whole debate. I think there was an animation or something that went around on social media back then on Instagram, and it was hilarious. And they were going back and forth about, look, the guy was like, look, if you want to come through, I'm good either way. And she was just having like, do you want me to show up? And I understand the argument from both sides, right? The woman wants confirmation that he actually wants her to come through, because she doesn't want a situation where she comes by and he's just being aloof, or he's acting funny, and he's not being accommodating or whatever, and she'll feel like a mug, like, who even asked me to come and see this guy? I'm the one that carried my big head here, and now he's just being a jerk. So she'd feel a bit stupid in that situation. And the guy too doesn't want to ask her to come through, like, verbally, particularly saying, even though rather he's probably going to enjoy her company, he doesn't want to say, I want you to come by, I'd like to see you, I'd really love it if you came through. He doesn't want to say that because perhaps he doesn't want the responsibility or the onus of having to host her and just put his best foot forward and all that, especially since his initial plan was just to chill out. Maybe he didn't want to like exert himself but he wouldn't mind getting a little bit of TLC from her if she shows up. So yeah, like I said, I see both sides of the argument, but that thing was so hilarious, and it's always cropped up in, I guess, everyone's life in one way, shape, or form. I know it's things like that have happened, with me in the past. Not necessarily like come through, but do you want to go and see this play? And do you want me to come with you to see this play? All those kind of back and forth arguments. It's hilarious. I always love it. Anyway, the third reason why men tend to not talk and to lock up, right? And this reason is going to sound very similar to the first one, which I said was men don't like asking for help. This reason is because men don't like to look weak, right? So when we ask for help in situations like the one Logan and her husband were in, or other types of situations like that, we feel like we look a bit weak, and we need help. It's different from asking for help, because I'm going to cite an example or a situation that happened to me recently, and it wasn't a situation that I actually needed help, which was point number one. This was a situation where I was concerned about looking weak, right? Men don't look weak. We're meant to look strong. I mean, just societies, I don't know, the way they've painted how a man is meant to handle situations and just to generally, come across, right, as being strong, not looking weak or vulnerable or needy, right? So I think many times us men don't talk because we don't share what's on our heart, what we're going through, or what we want from particularly a woman in a situation like this, or our spouse or partner, because we don't want to look like we're weaklings, And tying it to point number two, sometimes showing that vulnerability can be used or weaponized against us by the women in our lives when we show, our weak side. So there's also that. Now, bringing this not wanting to look weak thing to me, right? I'm thinking of how much of it I can share with you guys and how much, I should keep to myself. So I have a very close friend, pretty much my best friend. Let's call her B. And I haven't seen B. This is August. I don't think I'd seen B since February or January, right? And I don't really open up to very many people, but I open up to B. I tell her, the things I'm going through. I share a lot with her. But B she's a busy babe. She has a very demanding job. She's a member of several religious and non-religious communities, so her time is not always hers. So which kind of explains why we didn't see for almost like 7 months this year. We've seen at the beginning of this month, right? We hung out, but it wasn't until we had a tough conversation. How we got to that conversation was that I posted something on my Insta stories for an event I was going for, and she responded to it. She was like, what's up? Once upon a time, you and I used to go for all these things. You don't even invite me for these things anymore. And I replied saying, well, there's a reason for that. Should I tell you what the reason is, or should I gloss over this with humor like I often do? And then that was a bid for, and is a bid for communicating, or a bid to connect, is something that Logan and Ali talk about in this episode, right? Which essentially is when somebody puts a proposal out there to have a connection, be it particularly through a conversation, right? So that was me putting out a bid to connect, and she said, okay, fine, let's talk about it. What is the reason why you haven't been inviting me out for a while? And I told her I had tried in previous months at least 3 times to get her to come out for us to hang out at events, one of which was GTB Food and Drink. If you live in Lagos, you know what GTB Food and Drink is. Like a food festival, right? I was very stringent about the times I was going to be there. I remember now. I mean, when we had our conversation, it was evident to me that I myself I was quite rigid in terms of where and when I wanted us to meet. I wasn't flexible. So, and I like I said, I realized that after we had our conversation. But the point I want to try and make as I try and wind this point down, right? I had tried on a number of occasions to get B to come out for us to hang out, but it was one thing or the other. She couldn't come out. She was busy. And after I think the 3rd attempt, over a few months, I gave up because like I told her, no one likes being rejected. I felt like I was rejected, like I was let down. And I didn't want to keep trying because I didn't want to look weak and needy. And I'm very cautious about coming off as a needy friend. As much as I may want to see a friend of mine or a person and hang out with them, I don't want to come off as looking like a needy person, particularly a needy friend. So I stopped making bids to hang out with B. And I was hurting on the inside, and I was low-key holding it against her. And months passed by up until not too long ago when she asked me that, why don't you ask me out to all these events that you keep on going for? And then we had the conversation. We had an extensive back and forth. Then we made plans to actually hang out. We've now hung out, and we had an even deeper conversation about each other's behavior. And I've done some things wrong as well, which I didn't know about until she brought them to me. But I was really glad that I was able to open up to her and to tell her how I'd been feeling for the majority of the year. And it was even in the middle of that conversation, that we realized that we hadn't seen since, I still can't remember the first time or the last time we saw physically in person, but it wasn't before February. So it's been months, and I don't know, it's just, that's the illusion of social media. Because you're chatting and you follow people's lives on social media, you think you're connected with them, you've seen them and all that. But honestly, it's been months. I can't even remember last. We've seen this year. I just can't remember when, but it was just one time, and then the second time was earlier this month, August. So the point I'm making is, men don't like to look weak and needy, right? So that's why we lock up sometimes. That's why I locked up and I didn't, open up to B to tell her that I missed her, and and I felt jilted. I felt cast aside. I felt like I wasn't a priority in her life, or at least I felt like she didn't prioritize me as much as I prioritized her. And something that really hurt was I listed 3 occasions, it's probably more than 3 occasions, where I attempted or tried to hang out with her. And what pained me was that she didn't say, okay, this time that you're suggesting, for example, this Tuesday at 5 p.m. after work that you're suggesting, it doesn't work for me. Can we do Thursday at 7 p.m.? Does that work for you? She never proposed an alternative, which further let me feel like she didn't care, or she didn't want to see me. It wasn't just this case of her being busy. It also looked like a case of she wasn't even trying to see me. She didn't even care about seeing me at all, which is how it was interpreted in my mind. It may not necessarily have been the case, but you know how the mind tends to wander and just, cook things up at certain times, right? Luckily, unfortunately, we've gone through that. Hopefully, we're back on good ground and good standing now. And but what that conversation did, or those series of conversations that B and I had, I think just last week or 2 weeks ago, was that we can now have conversations like that with each other when we feel neglected and not catered to or whatever, or overlooked. We can say, hey, look, I'm feeling like you're not really invested in this friendship, and what's up, what's going on? So at least we can have those conversations now. I think prior to now we couldn't have those conversations. And B is a Yoruba girl, and Yoruba women can be their mouths can be sharp and nasty too. So I didn't want her, and because she knew I was sensitive about this, she didn't weaponize it, so to speak, or make fun of me by saying all these things that I was saying. A week before our meetup, or no, a few days before our meetup, I said, look, I'm really looking forward to seeing you on this weekend that we've planned to see, right? Don't change plans on me and everything. So I'm glad that in the middle of all my opening up, she didn't use anything against me or make fun of me, because us Nigerian men can be sensitive sometimes. So yeah, guys, those are 3 reasons why I think men bottle things up and don't share, and just don't talk, when we're going through stuff, or when we're just quiet in relationships or friendships or whatever, generally. Because first of all, like I said, we don't want to look like we need help or we don't have all the answers, because society makes us believe that we're meant to have all the answers, right? Secondly, because we don't want anything used against us, any information that we may share in a moment of vulnerability to be used or weaponized against us. And third, because we don't want to show weakness, because again, society has led everyone to think that men showing weakness and vulnerability is not cool and all that. And I don't know, it takes some maturity and I guess new age thinking, so to speak, to accept men being more vulnerable these days. It's not everybody's cup of tea. Lots of traditional people don't get the whole men opening up and being vulnerable thing. In fact, this whole podcast is a testament to a man trying to be vulnerable and trying to be open. And I hope those of you that watch the podcast and listen to the podcast, I hope you appreciate it. So yeah, let's move on, guys, to something new. So guys, something new this week is a TV show. Actually, it's Ahsoka, a Star Wars spin-off show which comes to Disney Plus on Friday the 25th. That's this Friday. It's highly anticipated, especially amongst us Star Wars fans. I know many of you watching are not into the whole Star Wars thing, so I'll try and make this quick. So Ahsoka is the character is one of the few surviving Jedi after Order 66 took place. The character is being played by Rosario Dawson, fantastic actress. Rosario Dawson has been to Nigeria a couple of times. I think as recently as last year. She comes for GTB Fashion Weekend. She came last year, 2022. I think I saw it on her Instagram or something. And a friend of mine who is now late, may his soul rest in peace, he took a picture with her at GT Fashion Weekend 2019. And I was really, because I went for that edition, but I didn't even know at the time that she was there. It was when I got home that I saw my friend's picture with her. So yeah, I'm always tripped, that Rosario Dawson has been to Nigeria a couple of times. But I digress. So there have been a few interesting or really good, well, I say really good loosely. There have been some good Star Wars spin-off shows that have come out in recent years. First of all, Mandalorian, fantastic. That's seen 3 seasons. Then there was the Book of Boba Fett, which was okay. There was Andor. I haven't seen Andor. That follows the events that happened before Rogue One, and I really liked Rogue One, so I'll check out Andor. And then there was Kenobi, which was probably the most anticipated spin-off, but that was a huge letdown. It was ass. So yeah, that wasn't fantastic. So we're all hoping, us Star Wars fans, that Ahsoka, which comes out on Friday, August 25th, a couple of days time, will be awesome. Yeah, there's a lot riding on it, and fingers crossed it's going to be a good one. So check it out if you're willing to check out something new, I guess. But at the same time, that's if you have Disney Plus. Not everyone has Disney Plus. Let me wrap it up, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. It wasn't so bad at the end of the day, right? It was all right. I made sense, with the topic. Guys, please like this video by clicking on the like button if you haven't done it before, especially, and subscribe to the channel as well by clicking on the black subscribe button, and share this content, this podcast, with anyone who you feel will enjoy it, especially given the topic that was discussed. Now let me get back to my life and try and, I don't know, I'm just feeling a bit low energy this today or this week. I don't know what's up. It happens sometimes, but I'm not feeling it. I feel like I need to get my energy back up. This phone needs to stop. I should have put it, in fact, testament to how things are they're kind of off today. This phone, normally my phone is on silent, but I didn't put it on silent and it's been going off. Thank God the call didn't come through. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me get out of your faces and figure my life out. I will see you next week in the next episode of the 30-minute podcast. Peace.